My name is Raquel Leandro. I'm currently 38 years old. I've started my career here at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, actually, as an internship at the time that I was still at university. I've studied at FCSH, New University of Lisbon, political science and international relations. During that period, I've done an Erasmus program in Helsinki. And you will see why this is important in terms of language development. I've studied my master's in, it's the European Union master's degree in human rights and democratization, which is based the first semester in Venice, and the second semester we can choose according to the topic of our master's degree. And then I returned to Portugal because I got a job at the Australian Embassy here. So, which is an interesting way before getting into the multilateral world that you start with the bilateral part. So I worked for the Australian Embassy for 6 years in Portugal. We covered Portugal and we had non-resident accreditation to Cabo Verde, Guinea-Bissau and São Tomé and Príncipe. Afterwards, or actually I took a leave without pay to accept another job while I was at the Australian Embassy. So I was a development aid officer, which is a position that the Camões Instituto has. So in Portuguese is agente de cooperação. They have several of these positions. So I was an advisor at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Timor-Leste for a year. And later, then I returned to Portugal and I took a similar position, but based at the Portuguese embassy in Maputo as a assessor de cooperação, so an advisor for development aid. So in charge of the development components within the embassy, so on the Mozambican programs. Following that, I decided, okay, I've tried the bilateral part. I want to, to jump. So the best way I spoke to several people and I applied to a UNV position. And I think UNV is a great entry point. Despite saying that is a volunteer position, these positions provide you with a stipend. So on average, and of course, all of this is available online, but you will be getting $2,000 minimum. So I think it's quite interesting to look at these positions, and they are much more. There are more UNV positions available than you will have of what Leike was explaining in terms of international professional positions, right? And you need always to have, as Leike was saying, when you apply for a professional position, they require previous UN experience. It's desirable, so it's highly competitive. So you need to think what is best for you. So a UNV, accepting a UNV post is extremely useful. It's not so easy as well because they come with a lot of years of experience required sometimes. They have different types of UNV. I recommend everyone to check the website and see, because you have the youth UNVs, and then you have the international UNVs. Normally, you also have national UNVs positions, which doesn't apply for us because we don't have a UNDP office here. But I think it's quite interesting to look into those conditions, and it's very good to gain insight UN experience before actually getting other type of positions. But I can clarify further if needed. So afterwards, I was very lucky. I think I need to say that. So Portugal opened a junior professional officer position in 2017. So the program had been closed for a decade at the time. So Portugal hadn't sponsored any position for 10 years. So they opened a position. It was for UNDP Guinea-Bissau. And I was lucky and I got it. So I worked at, as I said, at UNDP. I was working on development aid and sustainable development goals, the promotion. And I stayed 2 years in Guinea-Bissau. Then I moved to New York. In New York, I was working for the Crisis Bureau, the Conflict Prevention and Peace Building team. Following that, so it was a bit, now the GPO is over. And of course, the idea is that somehow you find a way to be retained by the system, but there is no guarantee. I think that is also important. So you need to apply for positions. Once you are in the system, and this is something that you also need to kind of, we don't have a lot of job security, right? Our contracts are quite nice, we have to say. But if your position is funded by a project, if the project comes to an end or it's not renewed or you don't find a place in another project, your contract will end. So that is to explain that after this part was over, I needed to find another position. So you need we as internal, so at the moment I'm a fixed term appointment, just to explain, but I still need, if I want to progress career wise or if I want to change locations, we still need to apply. And this is why when we say that international professional positions are extremely competitive, because most of them will open firstly internally. So that is given the opportunity to the ones that already work before actually getting the opportunity outside for external. So then I got another position. So in Guinea-Bissau, so I applied to manage a project on political stabilization and the support to the key reforms. As you know, I mean, I assume several of you will be international relations students, so you know the situation in Guinea-Bissau. So that was my role, to support the revision of the constitution and to promote the dialogue between the different powers at the time. From there, I moved to Nairobi. So I'm based in Kenya, but it's important to say that I'm not based at the country office. As Liki was saying, you can work in a country office or you can work in a regional office. So I worked for the UNDP Resilience Hub for Africa, which is a regional office. So from where I stand, in my area of work, conflict prevention and peace building, my role is to support 46 country offices in Africa. So I can tell you it's fascinating. I love my job, and it gives you also a lot of expertise in the different areas of work, right? And in the different countries, each country has their own characteristics. So you are always learning. And what Liki said is true. If you go to a job at UNDP, it will never be boring. I mean, every day I have different tasks. I don't have a day that looks exactly the same, and I love it. But it's not for everyone. Some people like a bit more structure or a bit more predictability. I mean, every day the tasks are different. So, but for me, I love it. So I will make the link with my second part of the presentation in terms when I said I support 46 country offices. And I can tell you the fact that, of course, I speak English, as you can see. I also speak Portuguese, obviously, but I speak Spanish and I speak French. And to cover Africa, this is fundamental, because if you go to West Africa, and I mean, even Sound, DRC, etc., the language of the country office is French. If you go to Equatorial Guinea, we speak in Spanish, right? And then, of course, if you want to support Mozambique, Angola, you will do so if you have to interact with the national colleagues and also with national stakeholders, will do so in Portuguese. So this is my first tip. If you are looking for an international career, do develop your languages. English is not enough. English is what everyone speaks, right? If you want to have an added value, a comparative advantage, I mean, make sure you either master English, learn Arabic, learn Russian, because those are the official, you know, the languages that are most commonly asked for. Like even Portuguese now, more and more, they cannot say it's compulsory because it's not a UN language, but it's desirable for some posts, because it has been understood that for you to master in your job, it's important you know the language in which you are working, right? So for example, if I'm applying to a job in the Arab region, if there is someone with an international profile that speaks Arabic, that person certainly will get the job much before me, right? I think this is a bit clear. So languages, these are extremely, extremely important. So the second one I think I need to tell you is a master's degree, I mean, a bachelor's degree everyone have. So this is the basic minimum required. And the master's degree is key. Even if you want to be competitive in terms of the years of experience, and I'm looking at you, you are young. So if you have a master's degree, that means you can reduce 2 years of job experience when you apply, as Laika was explaining. In addition to that, do put a lot of emphasis into what we call the extracurricular activities. For example, I have participated at a lot model United Nations, these programs that you have in different countries of Europe. Here in Portugal, I've seen them organizing as well. It gives you a bit of exposure to how the UN works. It develops your oral skills, negotiation skills. So they are quite interesting for you to, to get a bit of hands-on experience. But also, I mean, other courses, specific courses, a degree nowadays doesn't teach you what you need to thrive in a career, not to say in an international career. As you see, we are the United Nations Development Program. So the majority of the things we do, even when it's a specific thematic wise, we implement projects, right? So having a certification on project and program management is fundamental. Or, for instance, on monitoring and evaluation. Doing something, a specific course on gender equality, women's empowerment, or even on design thinking, which nowadays is a kind of something that UNDP and other UN agencies look in terms of competences, because it means that you think when you approach a problem and the way you are looking for the solution is different. You look at it, even foresight is, there are so many foresight courses nowadays, is something that we also look at. So a bit of these courses. Internships are very, very important because it gives you, experience. But if you are still studying, perhaps a summer internship, or as Raquel was saying, thank God, now our internships are paid, but you also don't have to go somewhere sometimes because they are home-based. So it's a great opportunity to actually, it's more sometimes equalitarian because you don't even have to travel somewhere. So you don't incur in so many expenses to actually have the opportunity to have a UN internship. Another thing that you need, volunteer, I think it's also an important activity that can build your CV, because when they speak about experience that you have to have, all these counts. And when you go to the competence-based interview, they will say, what is it? Give us an example in which you had to manage a team and you encounter a problem. So what did you do? What was the solution? I'm putting it in very basic terms, but even if you have an volunteer experience with an association or with an NGO in Portugal, sometimes even on those roles, you have to manage teams, right? Or you have to seek partnerships and mobilize resources. And those are examples that you can use when you get to this part, and also to add into your CV. So not only in the competence-based interview, but also like when you are claiming experience. It might be non-paid and you declare it's non-paid, but it gave you experience and is extremely valued. So this is another one. If you have opportunity to write papers, publications, participate in conferences, be part of association, basically be an active and engaged citizen, I think this is also very important. Above all, I think you need to, and Laika also touched on that, we are a multicultural organization, right? So a variety of nationalities. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different working methodologies. So we need to be quite open to multicultural ambience, right? And this is important. We need to be flexible. We need to understand that not everyone thinks the way we think. Not everyone solves problems as we would do. So this flexibility, what in Portuguese somehow we say jogo de cintura, is very, very important. So those are the skills, because the basic, and this was told, I was told this when I was younger in my career by a much senior, a director at the time, is that the thematic skills that you have, a specialization, as I do in conflict prevention, peace building, those are skills you acquire. You can practice them. But interpersonal skills, those are a bit difficult. Sometimes no one wants to have you in a team if you are not able to work in a team as a team member. if you are not easy to communicate, if you hide information, you know. So those are, for me, these interpersonal skills are very, very important in mostly in a multicultural environment as the one we work at. So I'm looking at the time because I don't want to exceed my 20 minutes. I will just emphasize a bit more for you that are at the beginning of your career, that have a look not only at the UNDP website, but other UN agencies. So read the terms of reference, what we call the job description, right? So have a look in your area of work, what they normally do. So for example, I give you a straightforward example. When I was much younger, I looked at the TORs and I saw that most positions required experience in the field, so in a developing country. And for example, even for the JPO position, they required 2 years of experience. Some of them require 2 years. And I thought, okay, I have 1 year working of experience in Timor-Leste. I had a lot of volunteer experience, but did not add up to the 2 years. So I was like, I need to get another job in another developing country to kind of meet this benchmark. So those are the type of things. And this experience you can get working for bilateral, so like a Portuguese mission abroad. You can work for a NGO, national or international NGOs. They have extremely nice jobs. So just as have a look at the TORs, so you are a bit more acquainted. I won't go into details into how to fill in your profile, the importance of keywords. So we used to say that applying for jobs is a job in itself. Don't submit the same application twice. It's just a waste of time. Your motivation letter needs to be tailored to that position, needs to respond to the requirements of that. And if you have to change some keywords on your CV to even match better that position, please do so. So it's, as I said, it's a job in itself. So finally, just 2 points. You need to be willing to be mobile, right? So for some people, this can be exciting. For others, this can be challenged. So it's very difficult for us sometimes to do a work-life balance, right? Because we are always changing places. I mean, you have seen how many times I've changed countries in the last year. So you need to be ready to be mobile. And you need to be ready to work in some hardship duty stations if you want this type of job. It's not for everyone, but for those that it is, just be ready. You know, to move to, you need to have a certain adaptability and flexibility, because it's every time you move, you need to make new friends, you need to get a house, you know, it also comes with its own challenges. Finally, working for the UN overall is not only for people that studied international relations. So I would like to really stress that part. We also look for engineers. We look for a lot of data specialists nowadays, communications, economics. So any course in terms of degree can actually provide you with an international career. So I think if you have friends out there that work even on certain areas of private sector, this is not only for people that have studied international relations. Quite the opposite, because when you see, then they actually look for quite silent professions in that sense. So I will leave it here, and I'm open to your questions. Thank you.